Okay, in this part I'm going to explain the scales of measurement. As you probably know, we have three types or scales of measurement: nominal, ordinal, and interval. Nominal scale simply represent qualitative differences in the variable measure, like gender. Gender is a nominal scale because you only have two types or two categories under this construct. Ordinal scale is when you rank your subjects based on the quantity or quality of the construct that you're measuring. Like if, for example, you rank them based on their size, such as small, medium, large, or young, old, older. This kind of rankings is all under the ordinal category. The interval is the kind of measurement that we use most often. The categories on this scale are organized sequentially, and all categories are the same size. For example, you measure height based on centimeters or inches, or you measure time based on seconds or minutes. So all the units of measurement, like the difference between 5 centimeter to 6 centimeter, is exactly the same as the difference between 25 centimeters and 26 centimeters. We also have different modes for measurements. That means that what type of measurement you're dealing with. You may have a self-report or physiological and behavior. Each of these categories have their own advantages and disadvantages. For example, the self-report is good because no one knows more about the individuals than the individual. So if I want to know about my students, supposedly I should ask them to tell me about themselves. But there are some disadvantages in this category. For example, a participant may deliberately lie to create a better self-image, or the response might be influenced by the presence of the researcher, and sometimes the wording of the questions is not appropriate, or students may have a hard time to understand the questions. And also, there are other aspects of the research situations: the weather, the climate, the noise, or anything else that can change or influence the responses of your subjects. The other one is the physiological measure. For example, you may measure stress by heart rate, or you may use brain imaging techniques such as PET to see what your subjects are thinking or how their brain is functioning. The advantage of using physiological measure is that they are extremely objective, which means it's not like observation of a researcher. Everything is measured and recorded accurately as is. But this disadvantage is, first of all, usually they require equipments that are expensive, and a more important problem is that when you are measuring something with equipments, you're creating an unusual or an unnatural situation that people may behave differently. For example, when you want to study sleep disorders, usually they install a lot of equipments on the subject's head, and to study the brain function during the sleep, to study how the brain functions during sleep. But the thing is, when all these wires are attached to your head, you can't have a normal sleep. The third one is the behavioral measurement. The behavioral measurement, usually it's done through recording audio, recording video, or just using a checklist and observation to measure, the number of laughing, playing, eating, sleeping, this kind of things. But the problem is, even with the behavior measurement, there is, there are problems such as bias, the researcher or the observer bias, errors in recording, and a lot of other problems. So usually the best option is to have multiple measures. That means that you use like a survey and an observation, and at the same time, if you can use a physiological measure to make sure that you have a good understanding of the behavior and study. And finally, when you are doing any type of measurement, you have to be careful about the sensitivity and the range effects. What does it mean? It means that your tool has to be sensitive enough to detect the changes. For example, if you compare a pass and fail test with a test that categorizes students to A and B and C and D, or you compare these two with a test that has a score between 1 and 100, which one is more sensitive? Of course, the last one, because you can have a wide range of scores from 1 to 100. While if you use just pass and fail, you may have some errors, in detecting who is going to go to the category of pass and fail. So it's not sensitive enough. In a similar manner, you have to consider the participant reactivity as well as the experimenter bias. We have different types of bias for experimenter, that some of them are intentional and some of them are not intentional, so you make errors or you record wrong number unintentionally, or because you have bias, you see things differently or you record things differently. So let's talk about these how this works. For example, one of them is paralinguistic cues. For example, you use your tone of voice to hint some correct answer, or kinesthetic cues that you use like body language to help a specific individual or specific group of participants. And the most obvious one is the verbal reinforcement, that you actually tell the subjects if they are on the right track or they have to change their responses. Or you very clearly you tell them what are the expected or desired responses, and they do it accordingly. And participant reactivity means that unfortunately, in education, we are dealing with human beings, and human beings behave differently when they know they are being watched. It's not like science that we are dealing with the objects that they don't feel or they don't see, that we are observing them. So how does it work? We have four different types of subjects that, based on what category they belong to, they respond differently. For example, we have good subject role. These are the groups of people who know what we want and they respond accordingly. The opposite is the negativistic subject role, that no matter how they actually feel, they just want to go against you. So if you give them a survey, they all choose the negative responses because they are against you and against your cause. The third group are the apprehensive subject role. They don't care what you want or what you want to prove. They just want to show a good picture of themselves. They want to show a desirable picture of themselves, and they answer somehow to show that they are nice, they are honest, they whatever shows a good picture of themselves. And finally, we have the faithful subject role. We all like to have this kind of subject in our research because they are pro-science and they honestly answer the questions, and they don't actually care what we want to hear. They just give us the responses that they feel is the correct response.